Hello everyone and welcome back to another exercise. So we have played around a little bit with things like contrast and brightness, but we haven't really explored all of the different adjustments that we can make with Photopea and in the same way in Photoshop. So this exercise is going to teach you how to add adjustments to layers that are temporary. So for this exercise, we're going to explore the different adjustment layers that you can add to your existing layers to change things like contrast, color, brightness, and saturation. So we are now starting from a Photoshop file. Before this assignment, we were pretty much starting from JPEGs or PNGs. But now we are going to open up an existing .psd or Photoshop file. To do this, we are just going to go to File and Open. I've already found mine. It should look like this and look like it has 3 images on one file. And then we're going to click Open. And when we open this, we can already immediately see that there are 3 layers here. There's layer 1, 2, and 3. Layer 1 is a very low contrast image. That means all of the highlights and shadows are pretty much washed out, and it's kind of hard to tell what's really going on in this picture because it's so washed out. The second image is just a simple picture of a rose and some leaves in the background, but we can see that the color has diminished from it and it looks really, really flat and almost grayed out. And the third image is a simple picture of what looks like a living room studio setup with this dark blue sofa and some other elements in the room. What our end goal is going to be is 3 things. We're going to add contrast and some brightness to this image. We're going to add saturation, so more vibrant colors to the rose image. And for the last one, I'm going to show you guys how to change the color of the sofa and make it look realistic. So when you start working on any of these, you do just want to make sure you're nice and zoomed in and you have a clear view of this picture. When you want to locate an adjustment layer, they're all going to be found at the very bottom of the layer panel right here. It looks like a circle that is half white and half black, and you can see when you hover over it, it says New Adjustment Layer. So we want to click that circle. And in this case, we are going to add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. Once I click on that, you'll see this menu pop up with a tab called Properties. You'll also notice that a new layer popped up right above the layer that I was clicked on initially. So now what we can do is we can adjust the brightness and we can adjust the contrast however we want. But we want to take it up a notch, and the simple brightness and contrast values here aren't really going to do it for us because this is a really washed out picture. So what we want to do before we play around with these sliders is check mark the Use Legacy box. Then we can start upping the contrast, and you'll notice that it makes a really, really big difference. It's really going to bring out the shadows and the highlights. And in this case, we are going to bring the brightness down so that the shadows are more prominent and bring the contrast up just a little bit more. So we will make this a pretty high contrast image. And when I say high contrast, I mean that the shadows are very dark, going towards the side of black, while the highlights are very light, going towards the side of white. If I ever refer to a low contrast image, that is an image that's really getting closer to the highlights and shadows being a similar gray color instead of dark shadows and light highlights. So I'm going to adjust this as I see fit. This is going to be a really kind of intense picture, and that's usually what happens when you bring up the contrast a lot in an image. It looks a lot more dramatic. I think I'm happy with the amount of contrast that I added to this picture. So now I can just click this little Pro button right here to close this Properties tab. And that is all you have to do with this image. We adjusted the brightness and contrast, and for the next image, we will move on to adjusting the saturation to bring out the colors of the rose and leaves.